Welcome back to the Fitness League, helping busy humans build strong bodies, sharper minds, and better lives. Join us each week as we cut through the noise, challenge the norms, and empower you to train smarter and live longer. Welcome back, everybody, to
the
Girls Room.
We're so lame.
We are Joshless today, so we're back to the girls' room.
He's fighting for his life with some kind of neck muscle back issue. So we are here after spending the entire weekend together. And it was so much fun celebrating our Sloanie.
Little Sloan, when did she say it to me last night? Where were we? I think we were like coming home from Costco, and she was like, can we just not go home and just drive to Kai's house? And I was like, no, we're not driving to Connecticut right now at 11 o'clock on a Sunday.
I will say our drives this time were legit. I think it was the timing, because when we came to you, it was only 2.5 hours, and we came at like 9 a.m. on a Thursday, and we went home on a Saturday night, which is probably like most people are going out and not driving anywhere. So it was perfect, I will say. And if it was always like that, I feel like we would do it so much more often. But
I said to Brant, maybe like next time we come to you guys, maybe we'll do that like day early situation of like coming Thursday, but then leaving Saturday night and time that bedtime. Cause I was like, that's so much better. I knew when you guys came down, it ended up screwing like the naps that whole day. And then like to not have that happen again on your Sunday is so worth it. Worth it.
Cora and Wes slept the entire drive back.
Yeah.
Like it was,
and like
perfect.
They'll transfer to the crib for night sleep, but not nap sleep.
Not nap. Yeah. Forget it. Yeah. Same. So that was a win. I was very pleased with that. But yeah, we had a good time and it was so fun. And we got some good content that you guys will see soon.
That we'll hopefully see soon.
Yeah, we'll see it soon.
Haven't seen it either, so stay tuned.
But today I thought, like, since Josh isn't here and we've been talking about this, feel like we've been saying we'll have to do that postpartum episode soon, and we've kind of just pushed it off and off. So it is here. We want to dive into really just all things postpartum nutrition in this one. Maybe we'll touch on training a little bit too in some aspect, but really just I feel like nutrition is the struggle for a lot of postpartum moms, and especially as a first-time mom, but even if you're not a first-time mom, like it can just be really confusing and your body just feels foreign and everything just feels foreign. So it's like, what am I even supposed to be focusing on right now? I know a lot of people dive headfirst into wanting to focus on fat loss and weight loss and just like all the things to get back to feeling quote unquote normal. So we'll kind of just myth bust here and just share our personal experiences. We've worked obviously with so many clients over the years in this area. And I will say it's been every client that we've worked with has had a different experience and also requires a different protocol. And it's hard because there's no like one optimal postpartum nutrition platter we can serve to you guys, right?
Yeah, it is super individual. And so some of what we say today, take it with a grain of salt, because you might hear something and say like, oh, well, I tried that or that didn't work for me. And we can, of course, speak to our own experiences and general advice. But if you're needing more specific, personalized, customized protocols custom to you, then obviously coaching is a great resource. Yeah, let's dive into kind of what we can at least cover today from a more general point of view.
Yeah, so I feel like everybody, well, I'm sure there's lots of confusion around pregnancy nutrition too, but there's almost more information given about pregnancy nutrition, and then postpartum, you're just kind of like on your own. Like there's nothing that you can do unless you're working with a coach or a professional. So that's really what we're going to dive into today. And I think the biggest question is it possible to lose body fat while you're breastfeeding, while you're in that maybe first year postpartum? The short answer is yes. It's a little bit more nuanced than that though. So maybe we can dive into that first. Yeah. Because I think, again, it does differ for everybody. And as we know, there's a lot of factors that go into fat loss. It's not just about eating in a calorie deficit. Like, yeah, that's the big part of it. But also like, you're also breastfeeding. So what is your milk supply doing? You're also probably not sleeping great. You're also probably under a lot of stress. So let's kind of break down, is it possible to lose body fat while you're breastfeeding?
Yeah. So first and foremost, yes, 100% absolutely possible. You and I have both done this, and we've coached hundreds of clients, probably thousands of clients who have been breastfeeding and have been able to do that. But like you said, there is nuance there. So let's dive into a few of these kind of nuance points, right? Everyone has a different tipping point for what might affect their supply. For some people, their bodies are very sensitive to a deficit, and maybe they drop 200, 250, 300 calories for maintenance and they start to see a dip in their supply. Whereas other people might be in a 500 calorie deficit and they don't notice any changes to their supply. So if supply is your number one concern, which quite frankly, I would recommend your supply being the priority over your deficit personally. If that is your main concern, especially in those very first few months postpartum where you're possibly exclusively breastfeeding or exclusively pumping and your baby is not having, additional food and formula or anything else, you're going to be hypersensitive to, or you're going to want to be hypersensitive to what your supply is doing in response to dieting. That does not mean that dieting automatically is going to lower your supply, but it's a consideration. And again, that tipping point is different for everyone. So being able to objectively play that trial and error game can be really confusing and difficult, especially to do on your own. Because it's really hard to be objective about ourselves. Like you might have one, low pumping session and you're like, never mind, I'm bailing on the whole thing. Like, it's very, very hard to be consistently objective with yourself, especially when it comes to something like feeding your baby. Like it's not something you want to mess around with, right? You see a dip, you're like, never mind, I'm bailing. My, baby being able to be fed is more important than these 5 pounds, 10 pounds, whatever it is. And it, again, doesn't mean that you won't be able to breastfeed for the entire, or rather won't be able to diet for the entirety of your breastfeeding experience, but it's possible it's too soon. It's possible it was too much. It's possible that there were confounding factors and it wasn't just the deficit, but the deficit in combination with the stress, in combination with the sleep, in combination with returning to exercise. And maybe all of those then played a role in a supply dip. So again, lots of nuance here.
Lots of nuance. And I think something that even I learned this time around, third baby, so by no means a first time mom, is like for me, I think I read this, or maybe you told me at one time, your boobs really only have about 2 ounces, 2.5 ounces per side unless you have an oversupply, of course. That's kind of like quote unquote the norm. But also as your baby gets older, your milk volume decreases, but the calorie density of the milk goes up. Am I saying this the right way? So like for me, like after we got through the newborn stage with Wes, I was like, I feel like I'm not getting as much milk. And I was trying to like feed him on my boob, pump a little bit and make sure he was really getting enough. And I was like overfeeding this poor kid, and he like had a terrible tummy ache and like started like regressing his sleep because I was like trying to give him a bottle on top of like, and I was just like, I thought he just needed like 6 to 8 ounces. I thought that was just normal per sitting, but a breastfed baby is really only gonna cap out at like maybe 3
to 5 ounces.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was something that was new to me, but that's also important, I think, for this conversation, because you may think that your supply is dropping, but it might just be your supply regulating or adapting to your baby's needs. So there is so much here that you kind of have to like keep in mind. And it's not always just about like volume of milk. It could just be, again, that your baby's getting older, they're eating more foods, your milk is more calorie dense, so it just might not be as much as you were pumping in those early days. And I know that's true for me, so I think that's an important caveat here. But what about when people say, and I've heard this so many times and you see it all over everywhere, it's like, if you breastfeed, the body fat will just melt off.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that such a common thought process?
Yeah, like people will use breastfeeding literally like as a dieting strategy.
Yes.
Which wouldn't recommend.
Nope.
But also, like, if we're going to speak about this as candidly as we can, will it sometimes affect someone's ability to lose fat? Yes. Again, not encouraging that as a dieting strategy. I want to make that so super clear. Not encouraging this as a dieting strategy. However, if we're speaking about a deficit and fat loss, a deficit, being in a caloric deficit yielding fat loss, when we kind of zoom out and think about when we say, okay, if you want to lose fat, you need to create a deficit one of two ways or a combination of two ways. One of those ways is to decrease your caloric intake. One of those ways, the other way, is to expend more calories, or a combination of the two. So if we were to, let's say, have a client come in, regardless of breastfeeding, let's say someone's not breastfeeding, if we were to have a client come in who wanted to lose body fat, we would either lower their calories or add in some caloric expenditure, i.e. more walking, more steps, more cardio, more exercise, etc., or a combination of the two. Well, when you are breastfeeding, you are expending far more calories. I have seen people, and myself included in this, need upwards of 1,000 calories extra per day, especially those oversuppliers, which was me, need upwards of 500 to 1,000 extra calories per day to maintain your weight while breastfeeding. So from a caloric standpoint, some people do see quicker fat loss when they are breastfeeding because it's almost like helping them achieve that deficit if they are not replacing those calories. Obviously, if that continues for a long enough time, you could potentially impact your supply in a negative way. But again, very clear, not recommending this as a dieting strategy, but from a caloric standpoint, because your caloric expenditure is so much higher when you're breastfeeding, it can impact your fat loss in a way that you may not have been expecting. And I know that's not everyone's experience, because you then will hear the flip side of that, Alessandra, and you'll hear people say like, no matter what I do when I'm breastfeeding, I can't lose weight. Or like, you know, someone will say my body's holding on to those last 5 to 10 pounds while I'm breastfeeding. I think you've even talked about this of like, when you stopped breastfeeding, you saw that like last bit of quote baby weight dwindle. So again, you don't really know which side of the coin you're going to end up being on, and it's so different for everybody. The other thing that I wanted to mention about expenditure real quick while we're on this part of the conversation is that something that I was not expecting, and I know that this is not everyone's experience, but for me personally, I found that my caloric expenditure was so high postpartum, like higher than it had likely ever been, regardless of the fact that like even in those early postpartum weeks where my exercise like frequency and volume wasn't as high as it was even during pregnancy, there were so many other things postpartum. Like I was always holding an 8-pound weight, an 8 to 10 pound weight. If I went on a walk, I had a 10, 15 pound baby strapped onto me. If I was going for a walk outside, not with a baby carrier, but using the stroller, I'm now pushing the weight of a stroller and the weight of the baby and whatever else is in the stroller. I'm rocking all the time. I'm bouncing all the time. Like there's all these extra little things that add up that like, was it just the breastfeeding? Probably not. I think it was a really big contributing factor, but I think it was also like the walking, the baby carrying, the always holding a baby like that warrants expenditure. You are expending energy to bounce, to rock, to sway, to push a stroller, to baby wear. And then obviously you add another kid to that and you're running around and chasing your other kid or toddler. And I just think that there's a lot of expenditure happening postpartum, and that can go one of two directions. It can go the direction of that person is not potentially consuming enough calories for that expenditure and they're losing body fat even more so than they would have liked, which was my case personally. And then there's the other side of that, which is all of that expenditure typically, not always, but typically yields a lot of hunger. And then that extra expenditure typically causes moms to increase their caloric intake. And then you have that question, you know, to come back to like, well, when I am breastfeeding or when I'm postpartum, I'm not losing weight very easily, or I'm having a lot of, you know, hard time losing weight. I'm always going to come back to, are we tracking calories? Because all of that expenditure typically comes with a lot of hunger. And if we are then eating back those calories, which not telling you to not nourish yourself, you absolutely should be. But that's kind of the other side of the coin there of the first thing that I'm going to come to when someone says, I'm not losing weight postpartum or I'm not losing weight while I'm breastfeeding. Are we tracking? Because
I think that's
you may
so
not
important.
have any clue how much you're eating if that hunger, especially if that hunger is really high.
That's so important because if that hunger is really high, I can also guarantee as a mom, we're likely taking the faster option, the quick snack, the packaged option. It might not be something super high in protein. So I feel like that typically is paired. Like if you are somebody who is super hungry all the time, sleep is off, we know that all of these things can impact our decision making and cravings in general. So we're often going to pick the option that might not be like something we would pick if we didn't have that excess hunger too. So I do, we are two people who do support tracking macros. It doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't have to be for your entire postpartum journey, but it's probably, in my opinion, and I've tracked through fat loss phases, I've tracked through reverse diets, I've tracked through maintenance. I did one bulk phase over the years. I think postpartum tracking macros was the most beneficial in my opinion because it really helped me obviously maintain supply, but just feel my best in the depths when we weren't sleeping, in the depths of becoming a new mom. Like I tracked not every day, but most days throughout all 3 postpartum journeys, especially in those earlier days, just because I knew like I need to keep tabs on this. I need to make sure my protein stays up so that if I am losing weight a little bit more rapidly from breastfeeding, that I don't also lose muscle mass. So like there's so many things here and I don't want to overwhelm you guys if you're listening to this and it feels like a lot. It is a lot, but at the same time, there are some simple ways we can go about this that make it feel like less overwhelming. Obviously, having a coach in your corner is going to be like the best thing you can do, but if that's not in your plans or in your process right now, what are, let's say, like top 3 focus areas for postpartum nutrition?
A good question. So I am going to agree with you on protein for sure. Let's keep that as high as we can for as long as we can. I think another really overlooked nutrient that is a really helpful consideration for people, at least on the nutrition side of things, is actually going to be fiber. I think that's one of those things that gets lost in the mix. And if you're postpartum and you're worrying about babies and sleep schedules and breastfeeding, you're probably not like, did I get 35 grams of fiber today? But fiber and adequate hydration, and honestly, those two things paired together are going to be really, really, really helpful in managing your bowel health. And obviously, there's a lot of digestive changes that take place during pregnancy and a lot of discomfort that can come with that. There's also discomfort that can come along with labor and delivery experience. I know a lot of people struggle with like postpartum hemorrhoids. You want to make it as easy as possible for you to be having regular, smooth bowel movements. And fiber is going to be a big piece of that. So I typically recommend somewhere in the 30-gram range, 25 grams to 35 grams per day. It's obviously going to help prevent constipation. There's a lot of other great things about fiber, like reducing risk of heart disease, reducing cholesterol, reducing diabetes, can be helpful for hormone health. So when it comes to fiber, think plants, root vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, legumes, fruits, unprocessed grains, seeds, nuts, anything that comes from a plant. And the closer we are to that plant source versus like, you could be like, well, bread technically comes from a plant because of the wheat, but like we are far removed from it being a plant at that point. The closer we are to it in its plant form, the more fiber that food is going to have. So plants and protein, obviously that fiber is going to be really helpful for digestive and bowel health purposes, but also satiety. Like we talk about protein and fiber being key nutrients for satiety all the time. So if you really are struggling with that postpartum hunger, because of all of that additional caloric expenditure, fiber and protein are going to be your best friends.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I think even especially postpartum, for me, yeah, pregnancy had its digestive things, but it still kind of sticks around postpartum. And I think that's kind of shocking to a lot of people, especially if it's your first time going through it. It's like you think everything is just going to kind of go back to normal, but it does take a while for things to think about it. All your organs are like
shifted,
totally misplaced. Like they're not in their normal spots. Your intestines are all like, things are just not normal for a little bit, and it takes time for that to come back together. So if you're experiencing that, you're not alone, but this will help so much. And I think fiber in general, like pregnancy, postpartum or not, a lot of people will ask like, well, how do you hit like 40 to 50 grams of fiber per day? And they're expecting my response to be like 1 or 2 things. But like you said, Joelle, it really is like a little bit here and there from all of these different types of plants I'm adding in. So if I make a salad that has like black beans, avocados, some pumpkin seeds, and then has like its protein source on it, that's like a lot of fiber, but it's also fiber from different sources, which I think is really important. So don't just jump to the Fiber One bar or the processed food item that's advertising itself as high fiber. One, that's probably not gonna, like, I always get a stomach ache after eating those. Like, I just don't feel good. It's too much at once. So like, try to spread it out and just sprinkle in little bits and pieces of different high fiber foods throughout your day. I think that's like the best way to go about increasing your fiber intake.
Yeah, I think it's also helpful. Like, I think when we typically think fiber, we think fruits and vegetables, which, yes, 100%. But also, like you said, it's like the nuts, the seeds, it's throwing the chia seeds in your oatmeal or throwing the flaxseed in your smoothie. Like, those are just extra little things where the fiber adds up that can be really helpful.
Hey guys, real quick. If you've been listening and thinking, I need to start doing something for my health, but I don't have time for a full program, that is literally why we built the SDE Method app. It's a fitness app made for real people with real lives. Busy parents, working professionals, anyone juggling 100 things. You can get in, get a smart, effective workout in around 30 minutes, some even closer to 20 minutes, and log out knowing you made progress. You can finally take the guessing out of your workouts. We have workouts designed to be done at the gym or at home, and you get access to all of them when you sign up. As life phases change, you can pick a new one that aligns better with what you have going on right now. And one more thing, we are also qualified for HSA FSA reimbursement. So just hit the app link in the show notes, start where you are, we'll help with the rest. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah. And I want to come back to one thing you touched on, Joelle. You said you were talking about like how some people feel like when they stop breastfeeding, that's when they lose the last 5 to 10 pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was definitely, it's funny because we talk about how this is such a different experience for each individual, but it's also such a different experience for each pregnancy that you have too, because mine has differed so much. So with Cora, I felt like I had that, like I was kind of holding on to the last 5 to 7-ish pounds until I stopped breastfeeding. And then once I stopped breastfeeding, I felt like it just came off without me really having to change anything. And now with Wes, like obviously there's a lot of different factors. I'm breastfeeding him for longer. I'm running. I didn't run with Cora. I stopped. I started running when I think I just did sprints until I stopped breastfeeding Cora. So once I stopped feeding her, that's when my running volume went up, and that's when I really noticed a lot of physique changes too. But I'm running 25 miles per week right now. And I don't, like, I have a little bit of body fat left that I might not have had pre-pregnancy, but I feel pretty good, and I feel in a much different place than I was with Cora. So I think it's just so interesting how different it can be for each baby too. But like, you have to factor in, like, you're in a different season of life. I didn't have a toddler to chase around when I had Cora. I just had Kai. So it was like just so many variables here. And that's really, I think, the take home message that we want to give you guys. It's not just as cut and dry as eat this and this will happen. It's really everything. It's also the support that you may have or may not have at home. What does that look like for you? How is that impacting your stress levels? Do you have time to go to the gym? So I think you have to keep in mind all of these things when you are deciding if it is time to focus on a fat loss phase. And maybe we can talk about that next, is like, when is the best time postpartum? How soon can you start focusing on this? And this is where I think a lot of people kind of go wrong right off the bat, which is, it makes me sad because it's like, it feels like it's something that has to be rushed, and we feel rushed, when in reality it took us 9-10 months to grow this human, and we expect it to just be gone within days or weeks postpartum. And that's not the case. That's not what we recommend.
Yeah. So I want everyone, this is the teacher in me. Okay. Bear with me. I want everyone to visualize a Venn diagram, right? 2 overlapping circles. And in one circle, we're going to title it health enhancing behaviors. And in the other circle, we're going to title it deficit behaviors. There is absolutely going to be a middle overlap between the two. Where I think people go wrong is they say, okay, I want to get into these health enhancing behaviors, or they kind of skip over that part and they're just like, I'm postpartum, I'm uncomfortable in my body, I want to go into the deficit circle. And that's where we see supply tank first and foremost. That's where we see like pelvic floor issues, core issues, basically like a rush back into dieting or a non-strategic rush back into exercise. That
Also
is going
muscle
to be
loss.
Yep, and muscle loss for sure. That is going to be problematic. Typically, I like and there's no rule here. This is just something, I think you and I are on the same page on this, Alessandra, that we've seen just in our own experience based on what we know about milk supply and production and regulating milk supply, and also what we know about like postpartum hormones and regulation there. 3 to 6 months, generally speaking, is like our, I would say, general recommendation for the soonest you might kind of enter that intentional deficit territory. Now, the reason that I bring up this Venn diagram, right, is because that does not mean that you can't be over here in this health enhancing behaviors circle. Because that's what I think people confuse sometimes. Like, okay, I'm hearing I shouldn't go into a deficit postpartum. So like, I'm just not supposed to take care of myself, or like, I'm just not supposed to eat healthy. No. That is not what we're saying. You can do so many things postpartum. And Alessandra, you and I have talked about this a lot. Like your goal, maybe early postpartum, especially as, you know, milk is coming in and all of that is happening. Your goal is not fat loss, but I'm still going to fuel my body, give my body the nutrients it needs, make sure I'm getting enough fiber, make sure I'm getting enough plants, make sure I'm getting enough protein. I'm still going to go on walks if I can. I'm still going to do my pelvic floor and core work, my rehab work, so that I kind of have these stepping stones, and I'm taking the steps that I need to further set myself up for success later down the road and when I am ready to enter that deficit. So I hope that made sense in my head. It made sense of like separating the deficit behaviors almost from the health enhancing behaviors, because you can do things for your health postpartum that don't necessarily involve a deficit. And there will be a time and place for a deficit if that's something you want to explore, but that should not be your first go-to.
Amen. I wish you had Josh's whiteboard to draw on.
That calendar behind me, if you're watching this on video, that is a whiteboard calendar, but I don't even have a marker for it.
Maybe
so
you make that. That'd be great. You need to make that a post this week, I think. I'm sure everybody listening will agree with me. No, but I'm really glad you brought that up, because I feel like it's so true. Women are either pushed the narrative or believe that they either need to jump into a deficit and like bounce back as fast as possible, or people are telling them, just wait until the baby's a little bit bigger to focus on this stuff. You don't need to focus on anything for you right now. And that is so backwards. I was going to swear and I held it back. That is so backwards, because who are you to tell somebody don't do anything for your health when we're in a season where mental health especially is known to plummet because of everything that just happened in your body? When we focus on exercise, when we focus on fueling our body, when we focus on getting outside for a walk, when we focus on prioritizing as best sleep as we possibly can, even if we're waking up with the baby 4 times overnight, we're going to have way better mental health than we would if we were not focusing on those things. So I hate when people tell moms, you don't need to do that right now. Like, you shouldn't be doing that right now.
I remember when you got that comment that was like, just enjoy your baby. Like, can I do both? Can I take care of myself and enjoy my baby? In fact, I might enjoy my baby even more because I'm taking care of myself and I'm not resentful.
Guaranteed you will. Guaranteed you will.
It's so interesting. I was on Jordan's podcast recently, Jordan Sayat, and he had posted a clip on Instagram, a few different clips. And one of the ones from our conversation was him asking me about the 6-week rule. And Jordan has a lot of followers. So there's all sorts of different people that come out of the woodworks for a clip like that obviously like something is being taken out of context from a much broader conversation. But he's asking me about the 6-week rule. Half of the people thought he was referring to the 6 weeks like postpartum sex rule. And then they're like, what is this girl talking about? Because I'm like, the 6-week rule doesn't mean you need to do nothing. And so people have all in their heads.
Boy. So there was like no context of like what you were talking about until later.
That was, so like the clip, the Instagram clip starts with him saying, tell me your thoughts on the 6-week rule. And so I right away, I'm going into exercise mode and I'm like, I don't think it's helpful to like tell moms to do nothing. There's still plenty that you can do. And I didn't realize until I started getting some comments on it that was like, they think I'm talking about that 6-week rule. But let me tell you how many women, they're like, there's no such thing as a 6-week exercise rule. And I'm like, huh? Like you get exercise clearance when you get sex clearance typically at the 6-week mark. And that's not even where I was going to go with bringing this up. Where I'm going to go with this is that there was a divided comment section, right? Either you agreed with me and you were like, yes. And basically I go on in the clip to say like, hey, I'm not throwing a barbell on my back 5 days postpartum, but it is really helpful to do that core work if you can, lay down on the floor, do some breath work if you can. Like I'm talking low intensity, minimal impact. And like, if you can get outside and go on a walk, that's going to be great. It's going to be great for your mental health. It's going to be great. And the comments were either like, oh my gosh, yes, pelvic floor work and core work and like outdoor walks saved me in my mental health postpartum. I would have gone crazy without my, walks. And then there was the other half of people that were like, screw this girl for pressuring moms into doing more. How dare she say that moms are doing nothing postpartum? Like moms already have so much on their plate. And I'm like, okay, 1, I know these are all projections. 2, you obviously know nothing about me. We literally have maternal mental health support included in our coaching services because that's how much we care about mom's maternal health. But like, that's a story for another time. But you had such a divided comment. You're like, how dare you say that moms are doing nothing and that they shouldn't be doing nothing. Moms are already doing so much. And I'm like, that's where I'm like, you guys are taking this so out of context. I'm not talking about nothing in terms of like, of course, moms have heavy, heavy plates. We have a lot on our plates. And also we're taking care of everything else and we're not taking care of ourselves. And the argument from some of these people were like, moms have to do nothing to take care of themselves. And if that's your philosophy, by all means, we are misaligned on that. We are unaligned on that. I think that there's a lot we could do to take care of ourselves during a really, really challenging chapter. And that made some people really mad.
So interesting to me because it's like you're not talking about go join a CrossFit gym and start CrossFit and throw a barbell around at 6 weeks postpartum.
Go on a walk. People were like, how dare her?
But I think that goes to show just like where our population is in terms of healthcare and self-care and taking care of yourself in general, whether you're a mom or not. Like people just do not view those things as
priority.
And it's sad. But that's why we're here, because we are going to change the world. We're not going to try to change the world. We're going to change the world, as Josh says.
Yeah, there is no try. Josh bringing in his Yoda. There is no try. We must do. Do we must.
I hope he edits this later and listens to that clip. So we kind of just touched on like how soon. And again, if you take anything from that, I think let's kind of go through a checklist for like, am I ready to enter a deficit? Postpartum, like what am I looking for? How will I know when I'm ready? And I think I don't want to make a checklist so that you feel like you have to be checking all of these boxes in order to reach a deficit, because I'm gonna say prioritize sleep, and that does not mean you should be sleeping an unbroken 8 to 9 hours per night. Let's be serious. That's probably not going to happen for some of you for a while. So in order to start focusing on fat loss postpartum, I would say you're mentally ready. Like that's the first thing. Like you want to do this for the right reasons. You want to start feeling better. You want to, which I think it is perfectly fine to want to look a certain way. Let's throw that out there too. We are not the people who are just like, you shouldn't care about how you look. I think everybody ultimately does and should care a little bit how they look on the outside. But the way that we coach is more centered on those health-centric behaviors, right? And a lot of times your outward appearance does improve even if fat loss is not your goal, or even if that is not like the main thing that you're focusing on right now. Anyway, all that to say, we support you if you have aesthetic goals. We support you if you don't have aesthetic goals, but as far as this conversation goes right now, we're talking about fat loss, which is an aesthetic goal. What else would you add to this list that someone can kind of just run through in their head? Like, am I ready to enter a deficit at this point postpartum?
I think that one of the best ways to set yourself up for a successful deficit is to be nailing the other health enhancing behaviors that we're talking about. So maybe we could talk about some of those other health enhancing behaviors for a minute. Are we drinking enough water? Like, I'm talking basic big rocks here.
Yep.
Are we drinking enough water? Are we having protein with every meal? Are we having color with every meal? Are we trying to get some steps in? Like, have we established some consistent movement, whether that's, a return to exercise, a gradual return to exercise, whether that's daily walks with or without the baby, strapped onto you or in a stroller? Like, are we nailing some of those big rocks? Do we have some sort of, stress management technique, whether that's journaling, gratitude journal, seeing a therapist? Do we have some sort of sleep routine? That it's not just a free for all of like, sometimes you go to bed at midnight and sometimes you just keep the baby with you till 2. And then other times you do this. Like, do you have some sort of routine, even if your baby's not sleeping all the way through the night yet? And mine certainly were not at 3 to 6 months postpartum. Do we have some kind of sleep routine, whether that's like you're getting in bed at 8 and then you're taking the first shift with the baby, or your husband, spouse is taking the first shift with the baby so you could get a 6-hour stretch and then you are feeding in the middle of the night, whatever that is. Do we have some sort of established sleep routine? So when we talk about foundations and big rocks, before we even consider dieting, protein, fiber, color, sleep, steps, stress, those all need to be well managed. Because if those are not well managed and then you try to enter the deficit, you are not going to be successful. Like, point blank, you will not be successful. And quite frankly, if you were a client coming into Levolution, what we are working on those first few weeks of coaching is nailing down those foundations first. It is very rare that someone comes into their coaching experience, already has all of those nailed down, and can enter their deficit immediately. It is way, 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 way more common that we are spending those first few weeks nailing the foundations to set ourselves up for a successful deficit in the future.
And like I said, that's not even like, you may start to focus on those things and start to see progress, even though you're not technically in the deficit yet. Like, a lot of times that is the norm, but those really are the foundations that need to be set to have that successful. Go ahead.
I want to come back to something that you just briefly touched on, and I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget this. Before even, let me back up this sentence actually. When I talk about these big rocks, and when Alessandra and I talk about these big rocks, the sleep, the protein, the fiber, the color, before entering the deficit, you are going to see body composition changes even without a deficit. That is one thing that's really, really cool about postpartum, is you kind of have this interesting blank slate. And then when you start engaging in these health enhancing behaviors, you start sleeping better, you start eating more protein, you start eating more fiber, you reintroduce exercise, maybe you're strength training again, maybe you're increasing your capacity, maybe you're doing more cardio again, whatever that like return to routine looks like, or return to a new routine looks like, if that wasn't standard for you before. You are going to see body composition shifting, even like around maintenance. So that's the other reason that I like for people to hold off on dieting until that 3 to 6 month mark, because your body's going to be changing these next few months anyway. And some of those changes, a lot of those changes, are going to be a product of those health enhancing behaviors, regardless of a deficit. And we don't want to have to enter a steep deficit if we don't have to. So I'm a big fan of letting the behaviors do the work for you before you even have to take that extra step of entering that deficit.
I love that. And that's such an important take, because again, I think it's something a lot of people don't realize, and also don't give their bodies enough time to like see that change. Like, they want to just jump in, and it's like, wouldn't you rather see progress eating 2,200 calories versus 1,700 calories? Like, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to eat more food and see progress? That's always the goal for us, no matter if you're postpartum or not. We want our clients dieting down, progressing on the most food possible, because adherence is going to be higher. All of your biofeedback markers are going to stay more consistent. You're going to just feel better. So eat the most food that you possibly can while still seeing progress. And I think that's something, even going through postpartum this time, I was like, maybe I'll enter a little bit of a deficit a little sooner. It's my third time around. I know my body, like blah, blah, blah. I think I dropped calories, maybe 200 calories down to like 2,100, 2,200. I don't think I ever got lower than 2,200 most days. And I saw great progress on that. And I was like, I guess I don't really need to enter an actual fat loss phase because I'm seeing progress here. I'd rather continue fueling here and increase my training, focus on getting stronger, adding more running in. And I knew if I wanted to specifically add more runs in and get performance back up to par there, I wasn't going to do well with a deficit and trying to do that at the same time. So for me, that was the most important thing, obviously outside of milk supply. Like, I want to make sure I can continue breastfeeding, but also I'd like to try running this postpartum while breastfeeding. And it's been going great. And it's because I've been fueling with enough food. And I think that is such an important take. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I think what becomes really confusing for women, and you were kind of just touching on this with the performance and recovery side of things. Like, I'd rather have that extra bit of food, feel good in my runs, feel good in my training, recover better. And like, that was your priority over the deficit. Cause you're like, I'm seeing the progress I want to see. I'm seeing the body changes I want to see. I want my I value my performance and recovery. I'd rather not cut these extra few calories. Like, maybe it'll take a little bit longer to get to like the body fat amount that I would like, but that's worth it to you to not have a decrease in your performance and recovery capacity. So I think there are some people, especially those who are listening to this podcast, who are likely already doing a lot of the big rocks, right? Most of our listeners, I would say, they're on their fitness journey, right? So I would say what can sometimes be confusing, and I'm really glad you touched on the performance and recovery side of things, because I think what is confusing for women is one of the things that we say from a breastfeeding and training and postpartum standpoint is you got to make sure you're eating enough. You got to make sure you're eating enough. And for the person who wants to lose weight, that statement is so confusing.
Listen, if you're tired of the all or nothing cycles, the diet starts Monday, the I know what to do, I'm just not doing it feeling, we should probably talk. Our one-on-one online coaching isn't just about workouts and meal plans. It's about building something that actually fits your life. No cookie cutter templates, no guilt, just real coaching and real results. Plus, we've got a pretty big team, so we can even pair you with an expert who actually understands your lifestyle because they've gone through it too. If that sounds like what you've been missing, check out the link in the show notes to apply for coaching. Then we'll send you the link to book a free, no obligation consult call with our team. There are no hard closes. We won't even take your credit card over the phone. You'll get the details to sign up on your own time. And more good news, we are in fact qualified for HSA FSA reimbursement. One last thing, we even offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. What are you waiting for? Spots are limited, so apply today. All right, let's get back to the show.
You're like, okay, well, I'm supposed to be eating enough for milk supply and postpartum and expenditure, but also I'm uncomfortable in my body and I want to lose body fat. So like, do I eat enough or am I supposed to not eat enough? Because that's what a deficit is, not eating enough.
Yep. I think this is where goal setting really comes into play too. I mean, I'm of the camp, if most women focused on performance and fueling well postpartum, they're probably going to be really happy with what they see happen. But I understand that some people, maybe you gained more weight than you wanted to throughout pregnancy, or maybe you just really are in a place where you're really struggling and you know that that's the thing that you want to prioritize. It's okay to prioritize that. It's okay to kind of hold off on the performance side too, if that's most important to you. So I think you have to decide, would I rather focus on fat loss and do this first and periodize that first, and then maybe once I hit my fat loss goal, we then switch gears and we focus on rebuilding performance. And that's okay. There's no one right way to go about this, but you have to go into it with a plan and not try to do everything all at once, which is what I think most people do. It's like, I want to run faster and I want to run longer and I want to lift heavy and I want to lose body fat and I want to maintain my milk supply and I want to do all these things. You can't do them all at the same time. There's a lot of contradiction happening there. So even like how we talk about with the hybrid stuff of lifting and running, we're not out here telling you to go lift all the weights and run as far as possible all the time. Like, you have to periodize seasons for that. This is no different. You just have to periodize what what this season is all about. And that's really, really vital and important when it comes to setting goals like this. So as far as like figuring out calories, where they should be, I think the best route to take is to kind of just track where you're at currently and see what you're consuming. If you have no idea what's happening and you're trying to set your calories, it's going to be that much harder. So don't even like put the calculators aside, like don't do anything yet. Simply just track how you've been eating over the last 2 weeks and do it for maybe a week or two and just kind of see where you're coming in at, because that will give you so much more insight as far as where you need to be, what you can be improving on. Maybe you start tracking and you're eating 2,800 calories a day, but protein is only at like 60 grams of protein per day. Then we know, instead of hopping into the deficit, we simply just start to focus on protein first. Like that would be the priority in that scenario. So if you're not tracking right now, do that for a couple weeks at least, just to see what's happening. And we've had countless conversations with so many people about like, well, I feel like I'm doing all the right things. I'm eating really healthy. What is healthy? How much are you eating? Well, I'm not really sure. Then it's going to be really, really hard to figure out how to enter that deficit if you don't even know where your maintenance is at.
Alessandra, your mic keeps going out. I didn't hear any of that last sentence.
Sorry. I think my AirPods were dying and taking over.
Well, that might be
what was the last thing you heard me say?
What are we eating?
Hold
How
on,
much are
I
we
can't hear
eating?
you now.
Can you hear me?
Technical difficulties as always.
We're having headphone issues. Stand by.
I think you're back. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. What was the last thing that I said?
Last thing I heard you say was, how much are we eating? What is I'm eating healthy mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a common thing. Like people will say, I'm eating healthier, I'm eating really clean, or, I'm doing a really good job with my nutrition. And then I ask, well, okay, what does that look like? Like how many calories are you eating? Are you tracking macros? And they're like, oh, I'm not tracking anything, but I'm eating really healthy. That is not enough information to go off of when you do have specific goals of fat loss. So in order to enter that deficit, we need to know where you're maintaining at, or maybe if you're gaining right now, or whatever the case is. So we need to just see what's going on right now before we enter the deficit. So don't guesstimate this. Like, don't just say, oh, I'm probably eating 2,000 calories per day, because we are known to vastly underestimate what we are consuming. My back?
Yeah, it was like in and out again for a second. Put them away.
We're going to put these
Yeah,
away.
maybe they were like picking up on and off. Yeah, I agree. I think it's also helpful for people to even know that when we get a new client I know we keep coming back into coaching, but I just want to give an example. When someone comes into the coaching experience, one of the first things we have them do in their onboarding documents is track what they're currently eating for a few days, because your coach doesn't even know where to bring your calories unless they know where you are currently sitting calorically. So when we say like, hey, you should track for a few days, that's literally exactly what your coach would have you do first if you are even a coaching client. So like the first step in even coaching yourself is you have to know how much you are currently eating. And you got to be real honest with yourself when you get into that tracking app. Don't follow any numbers it tries to give you. Don't specifically try to eat a little bit better or a little higher protein because you know you're tracking it. Genuinely eat how you would normally eat if you weren't tracking it, at least for a week. Maybe even 2 weeks, but at minimum a week. And then you could take a good hard look at, on average, where were calories, on average, where, was protein, carbs, fat, fiber. You might see that you were netting 8 grams of fiber a day or less. That's a really great place to start. You may see that you were, having 50 grams of protein a day. That's a really great place to start. We are not going to worry about the deficit until we can nail some of those big rocks. I don't think that tracking is something that everyone needs to do forever, but man, is it a really, really good starting point for a lot of people. And it's a really, really good learning experiment, honestly, when it comes to food and food labels and caloric intake.
Yeah, we are team tracking just because it can be so educational. 2 more points I want to bring up before we wrap this up. The first one is a common thought process that a lot of people have is that when they start exercising postpartum, that exercise is the sole reason that their milk supply drops. Is that true?
No, I think exercise is one of those things, especially postpartum, that we have to look at what else is going on. Exercise does not inherently cause milk production issues. Exercise alone, I'm going to repeat that, exercise alone does not inherently cause dips in supply. If you returned to exercise and you saw a dip in supply, my first question to you is going to be, how much were you eating? If your response to that is, I don't know, exercise was not your issue. What is most likely in these situations is that when people return to exercise, they also typically start eating a little bit differently. They also typically start dieting. Or when they are trying to eat healthier, they might just be eating drastically less. And so it's what else has been paired with the exercise, because you doing some bicep curls did not get rid of your supply. So what else got paired at the time that you reintroduced exercise? Maybe your baby started sleeping through the night, and that's when you felt like you had the energy to start reintroducing exercise. And now you no longer have a night feed. And so your supply is adjusting accordingly, as it does, because milk production is supply and demand. So maybe you're seeing a quote dip, but it's actually because your baby started sleeping through the night and now you don't have a middle of the night feed. Was it a dip from exercise? No, you just happened to start exercising because now your baby slept through the night and now you have the energy to do so. So we can't do this like correlation is causation thing. We have to think about all of the other confounding factors that may be contributing to that.
I love that. Hard agree on everything you just said. And the last thing I want to touch on that's come up, I think, honestly, a handful of times in our Q&As is, what do I do when I'm done breastfeeding? Like, should I just bring calories down? And that's really, I find, the main thought process is women think, oh, I'm done breastfeeding. I'm not expending as many calories, so I should probably drop calories right away, right? And we disagree with that. We don't agree with that take.
No, we are team keep calories as high as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah.
So if you are maintaining on 2,500 calories while you're breastfeeding and you have slowly weaned and now you're done breastfeeding and you can continue eating those same 2,500 calories and you are maintaining your weight, there is no need to drop them. If you could be maintaining your weight at 2,500 and then you're like, oh, I'm done now, I'll drop to 2,000. And maybe you're even still maintaining your weight at that same amount. I'd rather the 500 extra calories, right? Yeah. You may find, that said, that if you do keep that same amount of calories, you might say, oh, and now I'm gaining half a pound a week. And if that's not what you want, then yes, bring calories down. But I would first trial and error that. And I would also not immediately jump to, going from 2,500 calories down to 1,500 or 1,700. Start small. Maybe you only need, 200 calories. There's a big, big difference between the caloric, at least I would assume, I actually probably don't know this for sure, but I would assume that there's a big difference between the caloric expenditure of I'm feeding my baby 10 times a day and I have an oversupply versus the caloric expenditure of like we're down to 3 feeds a day and it's probably 2 to 3 ounces because we're weaning. That caloric expenditure is not going to be the same. So if you're at the end of like your weaning journey, you might only be expending, call it an extra 100, 200 calories in milk. Again, I'm giving like, vague assumptive numbers here, but it's likely that at the end of your journey, if you're not abruptly stopping feeding like amidst an oversupply, and you have we've gone from 5 feeds to 4 feeds to 3 feeds to 2 feeds to the 1 before bed feed to no feeds, like you have slowly weaned that. And the caloric, you probably don't need to make a massive caloric jump immediately just because you stopped breastfeeding.
That's so important. And I think, again, just shows the nuance required for these conversations because it really does depend. Like that's a vastly different comparison of two different people weaning maybe at different times or experiencing different things. And it's just, that is the moral of the story here. And that is really what we want you guys to take home. It is so different for each person. And I think and hope that that's what you got from all of these conversations. I mean, even Joelle and I have had just vastly different postpartum experiences, comparing training, nutrition, like all the things. Like, it's just, we're different humans living different lives. And that's why you can't compare your postpartum progress to anybody else's, whether it's somebody on the internet that you follow, whether it's Susie next door, whether it's your best friend. Like, these people can give you great advice and great pieces of advice, but you have to really kind of, again, put yourself through your own little experiment and figure out what is the best route for you. What is the best path you can take right now? What makes the most sense for your life, your schedule, your goals, everything that you're trying to do. So at the end of the day, you are postpartum forever, but you are not stuck where you are right now forever if you are in a place where you're not happy. And we hope that this helped. Anything else you want to leave them with or feel like we missed?
I don't think so. I would just like to leave off with, I know we've touched on this several times, of everyone's postpartum experience is so different. I also think that if you are postpartum and you are following other moms who, I think it's always helpful to follow moms who are in a similar chapter as you and sometimes a little bit ahead of you, so you can kind of see what that looks like too. But also, if there are people that you are following that are not good for your mental health in this season of life, you do not have to follow those people. If you get online and you are not inspired and instead you are feeling worse about yourself based on what someone else is doing, I would encourage you to like mute that person, even if it's me and Alessandra. Like, mute us, unfollow us, mute our posts for a little bit if this chapter of life is not what, you know what I'm trying to say. If who you are following in this chapter of life is like a trigger for you. I don't mean that in like a, oh, you're triggered kind of way, but like, there are people that I mute and unfollow all the time, and I'm like, this is not what I needed in this season.
And also, just another driving point to focus on your mental health. I know Dr. Nicole is incredible. She works with our, we do monthly calls for maternal mental health, but she also does her own
private sessions.
Yeah. So if you need that help, we highly recommend her, or find a therapist in your area. Like, the postpartum timeframe really is fragile for a lot of people. And if you don't have the right support in your corner, it can magnify everything else, every thought that you have in your head, and it can really just not be a great place for a lot of women. So don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it be from a maternal mental health specialist, whether it be for coaching, but maybe that's like the main stressor for you. What maybe it's just, I mean, I think for most people, working on your mental health is going to be the place that you start first and is most important. So don't be afraid to ask for that help, especially if you're new to therapy, you've never been to therapy before. Joelle and I both started therapy as adults, as moms, right?
I started therapy when I was postpartum with Reese.
Yeah. So, and I started during our infertility journey. So, you know, this isn't something that was brand new to us too. It felt very scary to start that and kind of like just make that leap. But I'm such an advocate for it because it did get me through just such a hard season of life. And this is coming from someone who genuinely does most of the time feel like she has it all together. But there are things that you can take from it and learn from it, apply to different areas of your life. So I just want to leave you guys with that. If you are postpartum, you are struggling in any sense, it doesn't even have to be like a big struggle. Like, if you just feel like you could use some more support and someone to talk to about these things, that is an incredible resource and something I highly recommend if you can swing it.
I found it really helpful postpartum. I don't know if you ever had these moments, Alessandra, you know, those like middle of the night moments, like 2 a.m., you're in a dark room feeding your baby. I found so much peace in knowing that in thousands of other places in the world, there was another mom doing exactly what I was doing in that moment. Mm-hmm. Something about that just like brought me a lot of peace of like, you are not the only one in this right now, and you are not the only one who has ever struggled with this before. And so I know that postpartum, especially those early weeks, can feel super isolating and super lonely. And if you are in that season, I just want to remind you that you are not alone. And there are so many other people, whether you know them or not, who are in a season just like you.
And it's not forever. It's a season, and it will pass. I know sometimes it feels like it won't pass, but I promise you it will pass, and you will one day be able to look back on it and be grateful for it in some ways, and also be grateful that maybe it's gone. Yep. Both are okay. Yeah. So I guess we'll wrap it up here. This was a lengthy one, but I think it was well overdue, like we said. We hope you guys loved it. I don't have Josh's like typical closing.
Oh, I don't think I even have that. I think I only have the opening.
You guys are Josh. Fine. You can go without it for the week. But if you did enjoy it, share it on social media. Tag us if you listened. We do appreciate those. And again, when you guys share it, it's not just to boost our ego. It helps other people find out about it. So if this did help you, we would love to see those tags and shares. And
send it to a postpartum mom who might need it.
Yeah, send it right over. So yeah, with that, where can they find you?
At Joelle Samantha.
And I'm at Alessandra Skutnik, and we will see you in the next episode.
And everything else you need is linked in the show notes.
I forgot my own.
You forgot your own line.